I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was halfway down the hallway still holding the ribbon samples for the centerpieces when my father's voice cut through the dining room like a blade. "Play it right before the father-daughter dance," he said. Someone laughed, "My brother, I think." Then my stepmother added, "That's perfect. She'll be standing there in her dress all proud, and then everyone sees who she really is." My fingers tightened around the satin ribbons until they wrinkled. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. And then my father said the words that hollowed something out inside me. "She's been pretending long enough. It's time she remembers where she came from." The chandelier light spilled across the hardwood floor, stopping just short of where I stood. If I leaned forward even an inch, they would see my shadow. My heart thudded against my ribs loud enough that I was certain someone inside the room would hear it. I had come early to drop off seating charts. I wasn't supposed to be here yet. They thought they were alone. "I still think the childhood photos are the best part," my brother Daniel said, "especially the one where she shaved half her head. People won't believe that's the same girl." "That was a phase," my stepmother replied lightly, "just like the army." "The army," she said it the way someone might say flu or bad haircut. "Temporary, embarrassing, something you outgrow." My father exhaled slowly. I could picture him leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled. "No," he said. "It's not just about embarrassing her. It's about grounding her. She's gotten self-important. This wedding, the uniform, the medals. Everyone treats her like she's done something extraordinary. She hasn't. She just ran away." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were new. I'd heard versions of them before, quieter, disguised as jokes, softened in public. But hearing them spoken plainly without restraint peeled away whatever illusions I'd been clinging to. "She'll be fine," Daniel added. "It'll knock her down a peg. Besides, it's kind of funny. Bride gets humbled at her own reception." Someone poured wine. Glass touched glass. They were smiling. I could hear it. And after the video, my stepmother continued, "You'll stand up for the toast. Say something supportive. That way it doesn't seem cruel." "Of course," my father said. "I'm not trying to hurt her. I'm trying to remind her she's still my daughter." Still my daughter. The phrase sounded almost tender if I ignored the rest. I stepped back silently, careful not to let my heel click against the wood. The hallway felt longer than before, like the house had stretched itself between me and the front door. My reflection flickered in the glass cabinet as I passed a white envelope in one hand, ribbon samples crushed in the other. I looked composed, calm. Someone who had not just overheard her family planning to humiliate her in front of 200 guests. Outside, the late afternoon air carried the smell of cut grass and warm pavement. I walked to my car slowly, each step deliberate, as if sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile control I still had. I sat behind the wheel but didn't start the engine. My hands rested on the steering wheel, steady. Training does that. You learn to compartmentalize, to observe, to delay reaction. They had a plan. That was the first thing that settled into place in my mind. Not an impulsive joke, not a careless comment, a coordinated presentation. Slides, photos, timing. My father's voice had been calm, logistical. He had thought this through. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured the reception hall. White drapery, soft lights. My fiancé Michael smiling across the dance floor. My father taking the microphone, the screen lighting up. Guests turning in their chairs. Laughter uncertain at first, then louder as the photos rolled. Me at 16, hair half-shaved. Me arguing in the driveway. Me crying the day I left. Captions. Context stripped away. The humiliation wouldn't be loud, it would be polite. That was the worst part. I opened my eyes. The sky had begun to shift toward evening pale blue, fading into gold. I finally started the car and pulled away from the curb. The house shrank in the rearview mirror, but the conversation stayed with me, each sentence replaying with uncomfortable clarity. On the drive home, I thought about the father-daughter dance. We had practiced it once awkwardly in the living room. He'd laughed when he stepped on my shoe. "You're too stiff," he'd said. "Relax." I had tried. Now I wondered if he'd already been planning the moment when the music would stop and the screen would glow. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Did you drop off the seating charts? Mom wants to double-check table 8. I stared at the screen. My thumbs hovered, then typed back, "Yes. Everything's fine." Everything's fine. The lie came easily. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I needed time. Reacting now would give them power. Confrontation would only confirm their narrative, emotional, dramatic, oversensitive. I could already hear Daniel's voice. See, she can't take a joke. The light turned green. I drove on. When I reached my apartment, the quiet felt almost artificial. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, ordinary sounds that seemed distant. I placed the envelope on the counter and smoothed the wrinkled ribbons, pressing them flat with my palm. Small controlled motions, something to anchor myself. I poured a glass of water and stood by the window. Across the street, a couple walked their dog, laughing about something trivial. Life continuing, normal. I thought about my father again. Not the man from the dining room, but the one from years earlier, teaching me to ride a bike, running alongside me until I found my balance. He had let go without telling me. I'd looked back and realized I was riding alone. I remembered the pride in his smile then, or maybe I imagined it. Somewhere along the way, that pride had turned into something else. Distance, disapproval, silence, and now, strategy. I set the glass down. My reflection in the window looked composed again. Calm. Controlled. The same stillness that had settled over me in the hallway returned, but now it felt sharper, more focused. They believed they were preparing a surprise. They believed I would stand there stunned while they defined me. I reached for my phone and opened the Notes app. Not a plan yet. Just fragments, timeline, a V technician, presentation order. I didn't know exactly what I would do, but I knew one thing with certainty: I would not stand still. The sun dipped below the buildings, leaving the room in soft shadow. I typed one more line and then stopped, letting the silence settle around me. They thought they were planning my humiliation. They had no idea they'd just given me everything I needed. By the next morning, the shock had settled into something quieter. Not anger, not yet, but a steady, controlled awareness. The kind that comes before a long operation. I made coffee black and sat at the small table by the window. The city moved normally outside commuters' delivery trucks, a woman watering plants on her balcony. Everything looked ordinary. It felt strange that something inside my life had shifted so dramatically while the rest of the world stayed untouched. I didn't tell Michael, not because I didn't trust him, but because I knew he would try to fix it. He would call my father, smooth things over, push for a compromise. Michael believed in repair. I believed in clarity. And right now, clarity meant watching carefully. The coffee cooled in my hand as memories began to surface, not in long sentimental waves, but in sharp, isolated moments. My father standing at the end of the driveway the day I told him I was enlisting. His face unreadable, jaw tight. "You're making a mistake," he'd said. No shouting, no dramatic gestures, just a flat certainty, like he was stating the weather. "I've already signed," I told him. He shook his head slowly. "You don't even know what you're running toward. You're just running away." At the time, I had tried to explain. I told him I wanted discipline, purpose, something larger than the narrow expectations of the family business. He had listened, arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere past me. "You have purpose here," he replied. "You're choosing instability. You'll regret it." He didn't come to my basic training graduation. He said he had meetings. Daniel came instead, late, wearing sunglasses indoors. "Dad's proud," he told me casually. "He just doesn't understand the military thing." I nodded, even though I knew that wasn't quite true. My father understood perfectly. He simply didn't approve. The first time I made officer, I mailed him the announcement. He texted back, "Congratulations. Stay safe." 2 sentences. No call, no questions. I told myself he just didn't know what to say. I set the coffee down and rubbed my thumb along the rim of the mug. The past didn't feel dramatic anymore, just cumulative. Small dismissals stacking into something heavier. The dining room conversation had not come from nowhere. It was the natural conclusion of years spent misunderstanding each other. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my stepmother, Carol. Her name lit the screen bright and cheerful. I let it ring once before answering. "Hi, sweetheart," she said warmly. "I just wanted to confirm the rehearsal dinner time. 6 still works for you." Her tone was smooth, practiced. Nothing in her voice hinted at the conversation I'd overheard. "6 is fine," I said. "Wonderful. Your father's excited. He keeps saying he wants everything perfect." I almost smiled at that. Perfect. Yes, I thought. I'm sure he does. We're putting together a few surprises, she added lightly. Just family touches, nothing big. I'm sure it'll be nice, I replied. We hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, then placed it face down on the table. The performance extended beyond the reception it had already begun. Later that afternoon, I drove to the venue under the pretense of checking the seating arrangement. The ballroom smelled faintly of fresh linen and polish. Workers moved chairs into neat rows while the planner adjusted floral samples. The stage at the far end held a large projection screen still rolled up. I stood there longer than necessary, studying it. Everything okay? The planner asked, approaching with a clipboard. Yes, I said. I just wanted to confirm the AV setup. Who controls the presentations? Oh, the technician will handle it, she replied. Usually families bring USB drives. We just cue them. Can the bride submit something directly? She nodded. Of course. Just send it ahead or bring it the day of. I thanked her and walked toward the exit. My pulse stayed steady, but something inside me aligned. Information, not emotion, timing, not reaction. Outside, the wind lifted the edge of my jacket. I watched as staff unloaded boxes of glassware. Preparation everywhere. Everyone building toward the same day, unaware of the competing narratives forming beneath the surface. That evening I met Michael for dinner. He talked about guest logistics, about his uncle's delayed flight, about whether we should add another vegetarian option. I listened, nodding at the right moments, letting his voice ground me. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You okay? He asked softly. Just tired, I said. You've been carrying a lot, he replied. After the wedding, we disappear for a week. No phones. The thought of quiet almost made me laugh. That sounds perfect. He smiled, relieved. He didn't know the storm building just beneath the surface, and for now I let him stay outside it. When I got home, I opened my laptop. The blank screen reflected my face, calm but alert. I created a new folder and titled it simply, Presentation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began typing notes. Not emotional statements, just structure, order, possibilities. I paused once, remembering my father's voice. She needs to remember where she came from. I leaned back in the chair. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was about remembering, but not in the way he intended. I closed the laptop gently and turned off the light. The room settled into darkness, quiet and controlled. Tomorrow I would start shaping what came next. Tonight I let the stillness hold me. They believed I would arrive at the wedding unprepared. They believed I would be surprised. They didn't understand that I had spent my entire adult life preparing for moments exactly like this. Moments where calm mattered more than anger and timing mattered more than words. And for the first time since I left my father's house, I felt something unexpected, not fear, not hurt, but readiness. 2 days later, I went back to my father's house under the most ordinary excuse I could think of, picking up the family photo album Carol insisted we display near the guest book. It was the kind of decorative nostalgia she loved, a curated timeline of smiling faces and staged holidays. I agreed immediately when she suggested it. It gave me a reason to return without suspicion. The house looked unchanged, but I noticed details I might have ignored before. The dining table polished. Extra chairs stacked against the wall. A box of printed programs on the sideboard. Everything arranged for celebration. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something baking in the oven. Normal, careful, almost warm. Emily Carroll called from the kitchen. We're in here. I stepped inside. She smiled, wiping her hands on a towel. My father sat at the island reading something on his tablet. Daniel leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone. There she is, Daniel said casually. Bride-to-be. My father looked up and nodded. You're early. I wanted to grab the album before rehearsal, I said. Less to carry tomorrow. Carol pointed toward the living room. Top shelf in the cabinet. Take your time. I walked past them, keeping my pace relaxed. The living room felt too quiet. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, landing across the coffee table. The cabinet stood open slightly, not enough to look deliberate, just enough to suggest someone had been there recently. I reached for the album but paused. On the desk near the window sat my father's laptop, lid half open. The screen had gone dark, but the cursor blinked faintly when I brushed the trackpad. The machine woke instantly. The file was still there. A slideshow window filled the screen. Title in bold white letters against a black background. Who She Really Is. My throat tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I didn't touch the mouse yet. I just looked. Below the title, smaller text, a message from her family. I clicked. The first slide appeared a photo of me at 17, hair-shaved on one side, wearing a hoodie 2 sizes too big. I remembered the day. I had cut my hair after a fight, something impulsive and defiant. Beneath the photo, a caption read, "Before she decided discipline mattered." The next slide showed me arguing in the driveway, my hands raised, face flushed. Someone had taken the photo from inside the house. I didn't even know it existed. Caption always dramatic. Slide 3. Me crying at the kitchen table, a suitcase behind me. The day I left for basic training. Caption running away. I inhaled slowly, forcing the air to move evenly. The tone wasn't comedic, it was subtle, dismissive. Each image stripped of context, arranged to tell a story not of growth, but of immaturity. The final slide I clicked through showed a blank frame labeled, "Remember where you came from." The cursor blinked again. Footsteps sounded in the kitchen. I moved quickly but carefully, closing the slideshow without deleting anything. The desktop returned. A folder sat on the screen labeled Reception. Inside, I glimpsed another file, finalversion.mp4. So they had already exported it. I stepped back from the desk, just as Daniel's voice drifted down the hallway. "You find it?" "Yes," I called, lifting the album from the shelf. My heart beat harder now, but my face stayed composed. I walked back into the kitchen, holding the heavy book against my chest. "Got it," I said. My father glanced up. "Good. Carol spent hours organizing that." "It looks great," I replied. Daniel smirked faintly, as if he knew something I didn't. "Reception's going to be interesting." Carol shot him a warning look. "Don't tease." "I'm not teasing," he said lightly. "Just saying, it'll be memorable." My father didn't comment. He simply returned to his tablet. But I noticed the small tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped once against the screen. He was thinking ahead. Timing. Order. "Do you need help carrying that?" Carol asked. "I've got it," I said. "I'll see you tomorrow." I walked out before they could say more. The afternoon air felt warmer than before, heavy with late summer humidity. I placed the album carefully in the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel, letting the silence fill the car. The slides replayed in my mind, not the images themselves, but the intention behind them. My father hadn't chosen overt cruelty. He had chosen subtle framing, the kind that invites polite laughter, the kind that leaves the subject smiling stiffly while everyone else shares an inside joke. He wasn't trying to destroy me, he was trying to redefine me. That realization settled heavily but clearly. It wasn't about anger, it was about narrative. He wanted to remind the room that whatever I had become, officer decorated, respected, I was still the impulsive girl he remembered. I started the engine. As I pulled away, I noticed Daniel standing at the front window watching. He lifted a hand in a casual wave. I returned it. Neither of us smiled. On the drive home, I stopped at a red light and opened the album briefly. The first page showed a childhood photo, my father kneeling beside me holding the handlebars of a small bike, both of us laughing. I closed the book again. They planned to show who I really was, but the truth was never that simple. When I reached my apartment, I placed the album on the table and opened my laptop. The folder from the night before waited quietly. I added a new note. "They will play theirs before the father-daughter dance. Must control sequence." I paused, then typed another line. "Not confrontation, contrast." The room darkened as evening approached. I leaned back in my chair, replaying the slides one last time, not with hurt, but with clarity. They had built their story carefully. That meant I would need to build mine just as carefully. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one. The city settled into night. Inside, the cursor blinked steadily, waiting. For the first time since overhearing them, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. They thought the video would define me. They didn't realize it had already defined them. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, not from anxiety, but from clarity, the kind that settles in once the facts are fully laid out. The room was dim, the sky outside still gray-blue, and for a few seconds I simply lay there listening to the quiet hum of the building. My mind wasn't racing, it was organizing. They had a video, they had timing, they expected surprise, which meant my response couldn't be emotional, it had to be structural. I made coffee and opened my laptop again. The empty presentation folder waited almost neutral like a blank map. I began outlining possibilities not with dramatic intentions, but with logistics. If they wanted to show a version of me frozen in the past, then I needed something rooted in the present, something factual, undeniable, and calm. My phone buzzed. A message from the wedding planner, final headcount confirmed. A V technician arrives at noon tomorrow. I stared at the text for a moment, then replied, "Can the bride submit a short video presentation gift to family?" The response came quickly. "Of course, send by tomorrow morning." Gift to family. The phrasing mattered. It sounded harmless, sentimental, not defensive. I closed the message and scrolled through my contacts. Names from my unit appeared, people who knew me not as someone's daughter, but as someone who stood beside them in unpredictable places. I hesitated only briefly before selecting one. Captain Morales answered on the second ring. "Emily, everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, "I need a favor." There was no curiosity in his voice, just readiness. What kind? "A short video, nothing dramatic, just a few words about working together." He didn't ask why. "When do you need it?" "Tonight." "You'll have it." I ended the call and sat quietly for a moment. The calm inside me deepened. This wasn't revenge in the loud sense. It was alignment, letting reality speak where interpretation had been planned. I sent 2 more messages. One to a medic who had served with me overseas. Another to a logistics officer who had once written a commendation letter after a difficult operation. Each response came back the same way. Of course. No hesitation, no questions. By mid-morning, the first clip arrived. Morales stood in what looked like a training room, fluorescent lights humming overhead. He didn't wear full dress uniform, just fatigue, sleeves rolled neatly. "Lieutenant Carter," he said calmly, looking into the camera. "I've worked with her for 4 years. She's the kind of officer who listens first, speaks second, and doesn't ask anyone to do something she wouldn't do herself. She's steady. People trust her. That's rare." The video ended. No music, no theatrics, just sincerity. I watched it twice, then placed it into the folder. More clips followed. A medic describing a night convoy. A quiet thank you from a family whose home we'd helped evacuate after flooding near base. None of them dramatic. None of them exaggerated. Just pieces of truth. By afternoon, the folder began to take shape. I kept the tone consistent, calm, restrained, factual. No medals displayed, no dramatic music. If my father's video aimed to reduce me, mine would simply expand the frame. At noon, I drove back to the venue. The ballroom buzzed with preparation. Staff rolled out linens, tested microphones, adjusted lighting. The AV technician knelt near the stage, connecting cables. I approached him. "Hi, I'm Emily, the bride." He stood wiping his hands. "Nice to meet you. What can I do for you?" "I'd like to submit a short video, something to play before the father-daughter dance." "Sure," he said. "We usually cue them in order." "Can I control the order?" I asked. He nodded. "If you send it directly to me, yes." I handed him a flash drive. "This is a placeholder. Final version tonight." He glanced at it, then slipped it into his pocket. "No problem." I thanked him and stepped back. My pulse remained even. No one watching would see anything unusual, just a bride double-checking details. As I turned to leave, I noticed my father entering the ballroom with Daniel. They didn't see me immediately. Daniel carried a laptop bag. My father scanned the room, eyes moving toward the stage, measuring. They were checking their setup. I walked toward them before they noticed me. "Hey," I said lightly. My father looked mildly surprised. "Didn't expect you here." "Just confirming seating," I replied. Daniel tapped the laptop bag. "We're dropping something off too." "I figured," I said. For a brief moment, silence hung between us. My father studied my face, searching perhaps for suspicion, but I gave him nothing, just calm politeness. "Tomorrow will be special," he said. "I know," I answered. They moved toward the technician. I continued toward the exit without looking back. Outside, the sun had shifted west, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I sat in my car and exhaled slowly. They were confident. That was good. Confidence made people predictable. Back home, I assembled the final sequence. Short clips, simple transitions, no titles except one at the beginning. A gift from the bride. I watched the entire video once, then closed the laptop. The room was quiet again. The calm inside me no longer felt fragile, it felt deliberate. They had built a story about who I used to be. I had built one about who I had become. Tomorrow those two stories would meet, and only one would feel complete. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly, almost deceptively calm. Sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains in soft bands, landing across the carpet and the chair where my dress hung. For a moment I lay still, listening to the muffled sounds of preparation in the hallway, rolling carts, distant laughter doors opening and closing. The world outside my room moved toward celebration. Inside, I focused on breathing slowly, evenly, the way I had learned years ago before briefings that mattered. My phone sat on the nightstand. No missed calls, no unexpected messages. The final video had been sent the night before, confirmed by the technician with a short reply received. "You're first in queue." "You're first in queue." I repeated the phrase quietly in my mind, not as reassurance but as structure. By mid-morning, the bridal suite filled with movement. My friend Lauren adjusted the hem of my dress while another friend pinned my hair. Soft music played in the background, something instrumental and warm. They talked about flowers, about weather, about how calm I looked. I smiled when appropriate, answering in short, gentle sentences. None of them knew the undercurrent running beneath the day. I wanted to keep it that way. "You're quieter than I expected," Lauren said, stepping back to study me. "Just taking it in," I replied. She nodded, satisfied. "You look grounded." Grounded, the word lingered. An hour later, my father knocked softly on the door. The room hushed as he stepped inside. He wore a dark suit tie, perfectly centered expression, carefully composed. For a second, we just looked at each other. The photographer raised her camera, capturing the moment. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." He stepped closer, adjusting the edge of my sleeve in a gesture that felt almost familiar. "Everything ready?" "Yes." He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I'm proud of you today." The sentence landed gently, but I felt the distance beneath it. Not insincere, just incomplete. I nodded. "I'm glad you're here." He seemed relieved by the simplicity of the exchange. The photographer asked us to stand side by side, then to hold hands. We complied. Flash. Another image preserved calm faces, quiet understanding. Anyone looking later would see nothing unusual. When he left, Lauren exhaled softly. "He seems emotional." "Maybe," I said. By afternoon, guests filled the ceremony space. The music swelled, then softened. I walked down the aisle slowly, Michael waiting at the end, his expression open and steady. For a while, everything else receded: the conversation, the planning, the tension. The vows felt real, grounding me in something larger than the conflict. When we said "I do," the applause sounded warm, genuine. I let myself feel it. The reception hall glowed when we entered. Candlelight flickered across glassware, soft conversations blending into a gentle hum. People hugged us, offered congratulations, laughter rising naturally. My father moved easily among guests, shaking hands, smiling. Daniel hovered near the stage more than once, glancing toward the technician. I noticed without staring. Dinner passed smoothly. Toasts began: Michael's best man, then Lauren. Their words were affectionate, light. The room relaxed further. I felt the moment approaching, like a tide shifting. The MC stepped forward. "We're about to begin the father-daughter dance," she announced. "But first, the bride has prepared a small presentation." There it was. My father's expression flickered, subtle, almost invisible. Daniel leaned slightly forward, confused. The technician moved calmly toward the laptop. "This is just a short gift," I said into the microphone, my voice even. "For family." The screen behind us lit softly, still blank. My father turned toward me. "You didn't mention." "It's nothing big," I said quietly. He nodded, though uncertainty edged his eyes. Around us, guests shifted their chairs, attention moving toward the screen. The lights dimmed slightly. Daniel stepped closer to my father, whispering something. My father's jaw tightened. He looked toward the technician, then back at me. I held his gaze calmly. The first frame appeared: simple white text on a dark background. "A gift from the bride." Silence spread across the room. My father inhaled slowly. Daniel's confusion deepened. The technician pressed play. Before the video began, I felt the tension fully, not explosive, but concentrated. Every movement in the room slowed. The carefully arranged timeline had shifted. Their presentation waited somewhere behind the curtain of expectation, no longer first. My father's shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. He realized in that instant that the sequence had changed, that whatever came next was not under his control. I stood beside him, calm hands folded lightly. The music faded completely. Only the soft hum of the projector remained. They had expected surprise. Instead, they were the ones unprepared. The first image began to form on the screen light, growing clearer, and I felt the room lean forward collectively. Anticipation, curiosity, quiet. My father didn't move, neither did I. The story was about to begin. The first clip opened without music, just a steady image, a training field under pale morning light. Wind moved faintly across dry grass. Then Captain Morales stepped into frame, sleeves rolled, expression calm. "Lieutenant Emily Carter," he said, looking directly at the camera. "I've worked with her long enough to know she doesn't raise her voice unless it matters. And when she does, people listen, not because of rank, because she's already earned it." The room stayed silent. No laughter, no whispers, just attention. My father shifted slightly beside me. I could feel the movement more than see it. Daniel leaned forward, eyes narrowing, trying to understand where this was going. The video cut to another clip. A medic standing near the open back of a transport vehicle. The background hummed softly with distant engines. "There was a night convoy," she said. "Visibility was almost zero. Lieutenant Carter walked the route first. She didn't send anyone ahead. She walked it herself. That told us everything we needed to know." The camera lingered a second longer than necessary, then faded. Still no music, just truth presented plainly. I kept my gaze on the screen, but I was aware of the room forks resting on plates, chairs, shifting slightly, the subtle inhale of people adjusting expectations. They had prepared for something sentimental, maybe humorous. Instead, they were watching something measured, grounded. Another clip. A middle-aged couple sitting on a couch, hands intertwined. The man spoke quietly. "Our house flooded near the base last year. We didn't know anyone. She coordinated volunteers' supplies, stayed until everything was safe. We just wanted to say thank you." The woman nodded beside him, eyes soft. The clip ended. I felt my father's posture change. Not dramatic, just a subtle stillness, as if he had stopped preparing for interruption. Daniel glanced at him, then back at the screen. The shift in control was complete now, even if no one acknowledged it aloud. The video continued. No grand statements, no medals displayed, only consistent impressions. Calm leadership, quiet reliability, a pattern of respect earned without explanation. Then the final clip appeared. Not a person speaking, but a still image, a simple photo of me in uniform standing slightly off-center looking toward something outside the frame. Over it, text appeared slowly. "To the family who taught me strength, even when they didn't mean to." The words lingered. The screen faded to black. For a second, the room remained completely still. No one moved. Then someone near the back began to clap, hesitant at first, then stronger. The applause spread gradually, not explosive but genuine. People stood. A few nodded toward me, expressions warm, thoughtful. My father didn't clap immediately. He stared at the dark screen, absorbing what had just happened. Daniel looked uncertain, his earlier confidence gone. The laptop bag at his feet suddenly felt irrelevant. I turned slightly toward my father. His face remained composed, but I saw the calculation behind his eyes, the realization that whatever he had planned no longer fit the moment. The narrative had shifted. The room had already formed an impression, and it wasn't the one he intended. The MC stepped forward gently. "That was beautiful," she said. "Now let's continue with the father-daughter dance." The light softened. Music began, quiet piano, familiar and slow. My father exhaled almost imperceptibly, then turned toward me. "You didn't tell me," he said quietly. "I wanted it to be a gift," I replied. He nodded once. No accusation, no praise, just acknowledgement. We stepped onto the dance floor. His hand rested lightly at my shoulder blade, steady but reserved. We moved slowly the room, watching with softened expressions. The tension that had filled the air earlier dissolved into something more reflective. "You've done well," he murmured after a moment. "Thank you." Another pause. The music carried us in small circles. I felt his grip adjust, more natural now, less formal. "I didn't know," he said. "You never asked," I answered gently. He didn't respond immediately. The words settled between us, not sharp, just true. The song neared its end. When the final note faded, he released my hand slowly. Applause followed again, softer this time, respectful. As we stepped off the dance floor, I noticed Daniel quietly closing his laptop bag. He didn't look at me. My father glanced once toward the stage, then back at me. Whatever presentation he had planned remained unused. No confrontation, no exposure, just absence. Guests approached us offering congratulations. The atmosphere felt lighter, warmer. The earlier tension had transformed into something calmer. Not victory, not defeat, simply clarity. My father stayed near me for a moment longer than necessary. "We should talk later," he said. "Okay." He nodded, then moved away to greet relatives. I watched him go, his posture slightly different now, less assured, more reflective. The screen behind the stage rolled back up blank again, as if nothing unusual had happened. But the shift lingered in the room, subtle and permanent. They had prepared a story about who I used to be. The room had just seen who I had become. And without raising my voice, without exposing their plan, the balance had changed. The reception ended slowly, the way meaningful evenings often do, not with a single clear moment, but with small departures. Chairs scraping softly, guests hugging goodbye staff, dimming lights one section at a time. Michael and I stood near the exit, thanking people as they filtered out. My feet ached slightly inside the heels, but the discomfort grounded me. The night had unfolded without chaos, without confrontation. Just a quiet shift. My father lingered near the bar longer than anyone else in our immediate family. He spoke with relatives, nodded politely, then eventually disappeared toward the hallway. Daniel left without saying goodbye. Carol hugged me, her smile careful, almost cautious. "You handled everything beautifully," she said. "Thank you," I replied. There was something in her eyes, not resentment, not approval, just uncertainty. She stepped back, then turned to follow the others. By the time the last guest left, the room felt larger, emptier. Staff began clearing centerpieces. Michael squeezed my hand. "I'm going to help them pack the gifts," he said. "You okay?" "I'll meet you in a minute." He kissed my temple and walked toward the far end of the hall. I stood alone for a moment, breathing in the quiet. The projector screen had been rolled away. The stage looked ordinary again. Nothing dramatic remained, just the echo of what had happened. My phone vibrated in my hand. Dad calling. I stared at the screen. The time read 10:47 p.m. The call felt inevitable, but the suddenness still tightened something in my chest. I answered. "Hello." His voice came immediately tense and controlled. "Where are you?" "In the reception hall. Guests just left." A pause. I could hear faint movement on his end. Maybe he was outside, maybe pacing. When he spoke again, the anger was clearer, though restrained. "What did you do tonight?" I leaned against the wall, keeping my tone even. I shared something important. "You knew we had prepared something." "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. "You changed the order," he said. "Yes." Silence stretched between us. I didn't rush to fill it. Years ago I would have explained, justified, softened. Now I simply waited. Finally he exhaled sharply. "You embarrassed me." The words were familiar, echoing his original intention. I let them settle before answering. "Did you like my gift?" I asked quietly. He didn't respond immediately. I imagined him replaying the video in his mind, the calm voices, the absence of drama, the final line on the screen. When he spoke again, the anger had shifted, replaced by something heavier. "That wasn't the point," he said. "What was the point?" I asked. Another silence. This one felt different, less defensive, more reflective. I thought you were forgetting who you were," he admitted finally. "I didn't forget," I said. "I just kept going." His breathing slowed slightly. "I didn't recognize that version of you." "You never saw it," I replied. The hallway around me remained quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a door closed softly. I slid my shoes off and held them in my hand, letting my feet rest against the cool floor. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he said. "I know." He stopped searching for words. "I thought it would remind you, bring you back." "I didn't need to be brought back," I said gently. "I needed to be seen." The sentence hung in the air. I didn't know if it landed the way I intended, but it felt honest. He spoke again, quieter now. When did you change? I didn't, I answered. I grew. Another pause. Then almost reluctantly he said people were impressed. I smiled faintly, though he couldn't see it. They were just listening. He let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You always were stubborn. Maybe. We both fell silent. The tension that had fueled the call dissolved, gradually replaced by something calmer. Not resolution, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement. A shift, subtle but real. I should have asked, he said finally. Yes. I didn't know how. I know. The conversation drifted naturally toward its end. No dramatic apology, no sudden warmth, just understanding forming quietly between us. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. Okay. He hesitated. Emily. Yes. I'm glad you showed me. I closed my eyes briefly. Good night, Dad. Good night. The call ended. The screen went dark. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle again. The night felt lighter now, not because everything was fixed, but because something had shifted. The weight of being misunderstood had eased even slightly. Michael approached holding a small box. Ready to go? Yeah. We walked toward the exit together. Outside the air was cool, the parking lot nearly empty. I slipped my shoes back on and looked up at the quiet sky. The day had begun with tension, moved through clarity, and ended in something softer. I didn't win that night. I simply stopped losing. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt misunderstood by someone you love, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Your perspective matters more than you think. We share stories like this every day. Quiet moments, difficult conversations, and the kind of change that doesn't happen all at once. If you'd like to continue this journey with us, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next story. Sometimes understanding begins with simply listening, and sometimes that's enough.